No, that was her audio on her phone and her computer, right? Interacting, kind of like when you join a Zoom call and you're on the phone, and it's like, da-da-da-da-da. But the redundancy, it's so great to have great team members and to be able to know they're going to show up and get things done and help each other out. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so where are you based in Charlottesville, or where are you based?
I'm just north, like 10 miles north, but it's considered the greater Charlottesville area. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. And you got this awesome event coming up. It's on October 18th, which is my grandpa's birthday, the day after mine. So Live to Lead. Tell me about it.
Live to Lead is a leadership conference that John Maxwell does every year. And he pulls together amazing leaders from across the country. If you go to my website, you can see the speakers that I'm going to probably include, including Malcolm Gladwell and John Gordon. And of course, John Maxwell. I've got a local speaker coming in. For me, locally, it's a one-day conference that gives you the opportunity to network with other leaders in your area, that gives you the opportunity to learn from world-class leaders that you'll see there. I have Ashley Reynolds Marshall, who is the deputy chair or the deputy director of inclusion and representation here in the Charlottesville city. And it's just the speakers that we have to choose from are just too big. So we have virtual speakers and we have live speakers, but we do
Malcolm Gladwell. That is so awesome.
Yes. And he like geeks out on the detail. He like geeks out on some stats and stuff about how we need diversity in areas other than just what we look like.
So, he called me a holy fool in his book, Talking with Strangers. I was like, oh, that's so me.
So that's the live thing. And if you wanted to go to livetolead.com, you could see if there's something in your area, because there's over 350 of these sites across the world. Quite frankly, we have some in Kenya and Australia and all over the United States. So there's always something for you. This is some pictures from our last one that we did in January, and we'll update them again this year with new stuff. If I'm looking for sponsors, if you want to be a sponsor, and it's just right here in the Charlottesville area. It's a nice little place to hold about 100 of us. And I'm excited to see what kind of leadership we come out with and the takeaways that we have this year. But there is an online version if you just want the leader pass. So if you're not in the Charlottesville area, you can just let me know and I can get you a leader pass, point you in that direction as well. And it'll give you even last year's and maybe even the year before. I don't remember who all, but last year included like Marcus Buckingham. I mean, some really, really good names.
Absolutely. Now, we talked about maybe relabeling you as the international optimist. And at the same time, I think we both hold very sacred the word intentional, right? Your intentionality as an optimist. That means a lot to me. We had a fun connection. What was it, like 3 months ago now?
Yeah.
It's crazy how fast time flies. So today we're going to be talking about defining our own principles. You audience, when I say you, I'm talking literally like this is your opportunity to define your own principles for impactful and another important word to us, sustainable leadership with Andrea Johnson. So if you go to firstclassbusiness.io, you scroll to the bottom, you'll see that our tagline is sustainable revenue growth. That's a tagline that most people find quite boring. But it's in fact,
I don't. As a business owner, I don't find that boring at all.
That's because you've been in business for more than 3 years.
Yeah.
And that's
I know the value of that.
It's a great way to put bro marketers to sleep. And it's a great way to help those who actually want to succeed and win and stop pretending they're making it go, oh, somebody actually knows how to do that. Yeah. And so you're talking about impactful, sustainable leadership and then defining these own principles. Let's give the audience some some direct insight. We usually hold this till later, but what does it mean to define your own principles?
You know, we grow up imitating. It's just normal. That's how we start. Babies start that way. We imitate the words, the actions. You know, even my son who's adopted, there are times I think, good grief, how is he not genetically related to me or my husband? Because he'll parrot things back to us, and he's going to be 16 this year, right? So it never stops. We are used to.
Wait, are you saying that when I went trick or treating and I was like, trick or treat, thank you, and they gave me extra candy, I knew what I was doing. I was just kind of imitating something that would give me more candy. Yeah, we all did it, guys.
Yes.
We still do it as adults. So go ahead.
Well, and as children too, we learn the things that get us the really good job, pat on the back, and the things that don't. And so we as we grow, we do that in school. We regurgitate things for tests. We go to college if we go to college, or we go into the workforce. Either way, we're learning other people's principles and priorities for how we should succeed. And you just mentioned bro marketers, right? It's like this is a good example as well.
Mhm.
When we do that, it's a really good starting place, right? We have to start
Yeah.
somewhere. Very few of us can like pop out at like 5 years old or 10 years old and say, this is who I am. I mean, I admire those people, and those unicorns show up every once in a while, but
Yeah.
most of us, Jackson, can't do that. Most of us need somebody else because we have our own strengths and weaknesses and our own proclivities and then the environment. So what happens is we get into the workforce or we get into leadership positions. And I saw this a lot in the university system. And I understand this happens in other industries, but somebody who's really good at their job then gets promoted to the manager of that job, or then decides to create their own company. And they don't have the skills, the leadership skills they need because they've been imitating somebody else. And so what happens is we end up feeling very disempowered. We feel like we don't have control. Like I had responsibility without authority, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons why I don't work for somebody else anymore. It's like, no, if I'm going to have
Mm.
responsibility for it, I want the authority to change it. But
Right.
a lot of times the clients I work with and the people that I talk to, they feel like they're constantly, consistently compromising their own non-negotiables. They feel unbalanced. If it's a work-life balance, if it's a balance of what's important. I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations I had with even just administrative assistants. How do I talk to all these professors and tell them, I can't do your thing today in 30 minutes because I have 10 other things in front of you? I'm like, well, you just tell them. But because they had no authority, they felt disempowered to even do those simple, simple things. And so when we are imitating other people's principles and priorities, we are disempowered. So it is
Mhm.
not until we can let go of those things and move away from that, like you said, to create and define, not create, to actually define, to uncover and define our own principles and priorities. That's when it becomes sustainable. You've got
Yeah.
the water project, right? I mean, it's like when you can find a really good well, or if you can find a really good underground stream, that's sustainable, right?
Yep.
Trying to pump it in from someplace else is not sustainable. What if electricity goes out? What if, I mean, it's just like all these great examples. And we
Yep.
just don't think about our own ability to lead being something that could be renewable on a daily basis. We
Yep.
don't think about our energy being, or our batteries being rechargeable on our own. We talk
This is a
about
big
self-care.
reason why the rich get richer,
Yeah,
right? It's not necessarily because they're bad people. There's good and bad of all walks of life. And if you have something that is sustainable, if you have what I call a virtuous cycle, psychology calls it a virtuous cycle,
yeah,
then you end up with something that can continue to produce results. And exponential growth can occur. So it may start with us with our principles initially, but if you stay at it long enough and you work towards what's called the law of the harvest, feel free to Google or YouTube that,
yeah,
then you end up in a position to where you are cultivating continuous results of different kinds and different magnitudes. So I love that you
yeah.
talked about that. One thing you said that shook me, because I work with entrepreneurs, and there's a massive difference between entrepreneurs and people who have jobs, right? Career driven individuals. There's a massive, we talk differently. We
Mhm.
see things differently. There's a massive difference between entrepreneurs at my level and sports stars like LeBron James. It's superstar athletes who are crushing it day in and day out in almost everything they do. My hat's off to him, man. He works
Mhm.
harder than I do. I don't know how, but he does.
Mhm.
And I have a reverence for that. You said some people feel like they're compromising their non-negotiables, and my hard-nosed entrepreneur leader says that's an oxymoron. Like if it's truly a non-negotiable, you literally will not compromise it. So you have this soft cadence about you, your ability to nurture and help people capture the reality that maybe you're more diplomatic with these matters than I am. My entrepreneurs, they will die without somebody helping, being more
Yeah,
direct to them and saying that's bull crap.
yeah.
Freaking make your non-negotiables non-negotiable and stick
Mhm.
to it. Otherwise, stop calling it a non-negotiable. Why?
Right.
Because 96% of businesses lose within 10 years, and 4% talk to the 4% who've survived. Ask them about their finances. I dare you. Those of you listening in, you'll find
Mm,
out that they're not actually crushing it. They're still getting crushed too. They just carry debt better than the rest of us.
yeah.
Very few of them have learned how to turn it into something sustainable and profound and profitable. So those are passions that are important to me for the protection of those that I serve. But leadership and impact comes in many different forms, and that's something that this show has given me a great
Mm,
opportunity to calm down, appreciate a little bit more, realize that, man, we need people like Andrea who are going to show up and meet people where they're at. And we also need people who are also able to be the holy fool. Again, thank you, Malcolm Gladwell, and sound the alarm and be like, if we don't change this,
yeah.
everybody's going to fall off this cliff at the end. So, how as leaders, how do we make space for different types of leadership? Because I see a lot of coaches who they either feel like they have to be Grant Cardone controlling everybody, or they have to be ultra soft and babysit and coddle people to victory. Is there a balance? Is there a happy medium? Is there a harmony that can exist? And what does that look like to you?
Well, I'm going to start with an example from Caesar Milan because I love me the dog whisperer. And he has a show out now called Better Human, Better Dog. And one of the things that he talks about is you have to be the leader. I mean, it's easy to think about this with animals, right? It's like you have to be the pack leader, or the dog feels like they need to protect you or is afraid of you. Or, I mean, it just watching it with my son, it's like, this is such good leadership advice, and to watch even a small child can lead a dog really, really well and be the leader the dog needs. What we don't realize is that I don't know that there is a harmony of leadership. I don't know that there is we don't want to be Grant Cardone, but we also don't want to be swishy. I mean, it's like the whole point is to be you. You were created with a specific set of non-negotiables, a specific set of strengths, a specific set of weaknesses, quite frankly, that you
Yes,
blind spots that you have.
absolutely.
And if you do the work to figure out you, then you have the ability to show up with authority and humility and integrity and say, all right, this is not a thing that I can handle. I got to pull in somebody over here. Like we
I love
started
it.
this live having a conversation in the middle of a conversation about your team that has redundancies in it because you need
Yes,
that. And that's a
absolutely.
perfect example. So
Mhm.
it goes back to I don't need to imitate Grant Cardone. I don't need to imitate John
Of
Maxwell.
course. And I
These
love
guys
that you tied discord to harmony just now, because that's a
sure.
part of making great music. Right. And
Absolutely.
so it's a beautiful way of helping people realize, like, well, it doesn't always have to feel perfect. We don't just want one note, we want multiple. And
Right.
I wrote this quote down for us. The whole point is to be you, on Andrea Johnson on leadership, right? And there's one other thing that people get triggered by that I notice, and most of the time it's soft people, and they don't like comparisons. A lot of soft people don't. They're like, no, don't comparing is bad. Don't compare your children. That's bull crap. I'm sorry, it's bull crap. And here's why. If I want to learn how to do a layup,
Oh yeah.
I need to watch what LeBron James does and Stephen Curry does and Kyrie Irving. Does that mean I'm replacing my identity with them? No, it doesn't. It means I'm willing to pick up and learn the technical component or the skill set from these individuals who've mastered a certain law of physics, and what they do. And so there's another discord opportunity there, right? To say,
Mhm.
well, wait a second, okay. When somebody says they are trying not to be like so and so, or they want to be like somebody and emulate, there's a progressive path where people start to find their own self. But then
Absolutely.
there's still that opportunity to recognize, okay, what are the other virtues and values I'm going to pick up from watching said leader on stage,
Mhm.
and are watching said leader engage with some individual in a very difficult situation, saying, okay, how can I utilize that with my own identity? So I love that you talk about, we shouldn't be replacing our true identity of self. We should be cultivating it. And yes, I'm also saying, and make sure that you are using healthy comparisons
Oh,
to see
sure.
how these principles are implemented in the world. So that's, you turned the harmony thing into a discord that was beautiful. And I got to
I love
honor
me
you.
some
You
7th and ninth chords, man.
That takes
Um,
leadership to do.
Yeah, jazz is my favorite music, so that
Ah,
you
there
gotta
we
have the
go.
discord in
I'm a
there to make
trumpet
it
player, so it
interesting.
makes sense.
It's like you gotta have that depth, right? But
Yes.
the other thing too is this goes back to how we learn, and you start off imitating LeBron James or Kyrie Irving, but you have to get to a place where you understand your body works in a different way, partially because it's not shaped like LeBron James.
No,
And
no,
so
yeah.
you have to adapt what LeBron James does, or Larry Bird, or anybody else, right?
Yep.
Or Kevin McHale. I'm going back to my glory days
Woo!
of basketball. But you have to adapt how your body functions in that law of physics and understand what works for you and what doesn't. The only way to do that is through experience, is through finally deciding, I'm going to do this myself. I know the principles I gained from that person, and now I'm going to actually make it mine. And everybody does that. Everybody, like if you watch
That's
a
right.
good chef, they'll do the same thing. They'll take it, they'll tweak it, they'll figure out what works for them. And when you're a leader, you have to grow as a leader on a daily basis. I just got off a call earlier with a core values coaching, and she's a CEO with several restaurants, and it's a family owned business. So she's not even, she's sort of that mix between, she didn't start the business, but she also isn't an employee, right? She's the CEO.
Yep.
And even she said, Andrea, I am amazed at how responsible I am for not allowing my core values to be honored. And when you show up in a way that honors you and honors others, it removes the defensiveness from how you lead. It removes the need for what's that word I hate? Competition.
Okay, there
um,
you go.
it eliminates that word. And
Not a fan, no.
I don't know that I would consider myself a non-competitive person, but for me, competition is all about making me better. It's not about beating someone. And so for her to be able to say, now I'm showing up in a way that means I don't automatically assume that when somebody pushes back, it's about me. They've got something going on. It
Right.
just changes. So that's where the harmony piece comes back in. It's like when you can do that, then you can actually meet others where they are. And it happens consistently every day. I have to wake up and do this every single day because I too have the same struggle because we're all human.
Yeah.
And we just need to once we understand where we're coming from, when I know what my non-negotiables are, and I want to circle back. You said, if they're non-negotiables, they're non-negotiable. You're one of those unicorn strong people.
I am.
For me, my non-negotiables were, and I've run into a lot of women who deal with this, especially women from the South or an evangelical culture,
Correct.
who have run into this idea that in order to be accepted, in order to not be called certain names, in order to advance in certain ways, we've had to put layers on and soften or even compromise our own core values for the good of whatever. And I know it happens to men. I just specialize in how it happens to women.
Right.
And because that's my experience. And the more we take those layers off, what's so fascinating, and my client said this to me this morning, was, oh, it turns out all that was all in my head. It's like,
Uh-huh.
oh, shocker. And as entrepreneurs, we do this. We assume somebody doesn't want to buy from us. We assume somebody doesn't have enough money. And those are the bad ways. But we could also assume that everybody needs our idea when we haven't really vetted it, right? So there's a lot of breaking those things down
So much.
that will give you not just the discord, but the harmony in leadership that will allow you to show up in a way that is sustainable. Because you don't need to be drained every day doing leadership, you know?
Right, exactly. There's so much wisdom in all the things that you said. I want to just keep going on these veins. I will say one of the unique aspects that helped me shape into the unicorn, right? The strength of non-negotiables is I was raised by my mom and five older sisters. Um, and so I got to see when there were six women who were super strong. My mom's first husband died in a plane crash.
Mm,
That changes your paradigm.
yeah.
Right. And then when my dad left, at her command, of course, to, no, this is not healthy for the family. There was a resilience that existed in them, but there's still that there's that passion, there's that empathy that I feel towards my sisters and my mom of like, oh man, I wish I could have helped in such and such situations. And so it's one that, because I have the resilience I have for my dedication to my own non-negotiables, I tend to be very outspoken with others. I'm like, wait, protect your non-negotiables. Don't let this happen to you the way I've seen it happen to my family members, and etc. So
Yeah.
it's something that's I'm really passionate about. And so I'm glad that you brought this up, because it's one of those realities that when we're truly strong as leaders, visionaries, when you're working with your team members, um, somebody who is actually strong, is not scared to talk about non-negotiables,
Yeah.
because you're not penetrable, right? You're
Right.
you're you're set in what you know. And if you can find team members who will honor that about you, and they bring their own non-negotiables to the table, and you can honor their non-negotiables, you can create an amazing
Oh, yeah.
environment to work in. So we're going to switch gears real fast. You've given one great resource, and that's this Live to Lead
Yeah.
conference. What are two more resources that you'd recommend to visionary leaders out there?
Well, I am an Atomic Habits
Oh,
junkie,
good one.
and I've read it. I got it. It's like on my desk. And so James Clear he just breaks it all down and makes it so simple. And even if you just use one, whatever habit you need. And like, I'm an ADHD advocate. My son has ADHD, and I realize their brains don't always create habits. But even if James Clear talks about even just setting triggers that will get you to do something. And so that's a piece that I'm like, I recommend it to everybody. And if you're an entrepreneur, I'm also going to recommend Profit First. But those are the books I would recommend. And conferences like Live to Lead
Love it.
are fabulous. Yeah.
I love it. Dr. Todd Snyder was my first 50-50 business partner here at First Class Business. He's now a silent investor. And he was really, really big on, and is really, really big on Profit First. And he's one of the best peak performance coaches in the world.
No matter how much money we have coming in, if we have it allocated appropriately, like the first time I did my taxes as an entrepreneur, I'm like, I have money to pay my taxes. It's so amazing. I mean, it's just like you don't get into the really hard stuff that a lot of entrepreneurs deal with.
Great book. Great minds recommending it, from Andrea Johnson and Dr. Todd Snyder. And we will be right back. We're going to take a short break. We're going to dive back in and hear about Andrea's vision. All right. Welcome in to Vision Pros Live with Jackson Callum. I'm your show host. We will be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there. What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Vision Pros Live. I'm your show host, Jackson Callum, founder and CEO of First Class Business, and we are on fire today. We have got the intentional optimist on the show, Andrea Johnson, and she has just come out of the gates like a rocket ship, and I've absolutely enjoyed it. We're going to bring her back on stage. We're going to talk about defining our own principles for impactful, sustainable leadership and growth. Before we bring Andrea back on stage, I always want to spread the wealth of resources that exist. One of them in the form of a military resource. This is the hardtokill.org organization, hardtokill.org by Dave Morrow. Dave's helping 100,000 veterans lose 2 million pounds collectively. If you know a veteran, definitely send them over our way to the community, Hard to Kill community, and check out his podcast. He's got one of the best military podcasts there is out there. Now, why is this important? A lot of military personnel lose track of their routines when they get out of the military. Others have been dedicated to a rigorous workout that's not necessarily sustainable long-term for their health. He helps them get reacclimated. The military personnel in our lives, they're facing depression. A lot of them are facing, their suicide rates have gone up a lot. So getting them in a community that helps them focus on looking good, feeling good, and doing good, I would recommend that as one of the best options and opportunities for them. So tag your friends, come and join us as civilians as well. I'm also in the group. It's done a lot for me. I'm doing 100 push-ups a day now. I wasn't doing hardly anything for almost 8 years previous. So I highly recommend checking out how Dave motivates. Then there's opportunities for Work for Latinos. This is our own in-house program. I highly recommend checking it out. If you're in a position where you're thinking of hiring a virtual assistant, they can then consider some of the Latinos who work with us. They go through a 90-day certification program to help them understand how being a virtual assistant works, how to be a digital ambassador, as we call it. Now, you can always use Upwork, Fiverr, or anything else too. But if you know Latino leaders, what we're looking for right now is Latino leaders who would want to be on our Latino-driven Spanish-speaking podcast. because they're in the process of building their own channel out. They just hosted Kika Ingles, who has 900,000 subscribers. They also hosted La Teacher Alma, saying out her name is right. I'm losing my English here a little bit, but they've been interviewing YouTube influencers and people who've been able to do dynamic things with their life. And what are we doing? Well, we're spreading hope in nations that don't typically have access to a job. If they don't go down a specific career path in school, we have the opportunity to dramatically affect economies globally with this process. And opportunities for Latinos has recently launched, as well as opportunities for Filipinos and opportunities for India, thanks to Ange Castro in the Philippines and Harry Vashist from India. We're grateful for them. So we can always do more. And speaking of the Water Project, the Water Project is a cause that I'm not affiliated with. I just really love what they do. I love their transparency. When you donate to the Water Project, you actually get to choose which community you're going to help. And when you do that, they will send you picture evidence and the story of what are they doing? How are they doing it? How are they bringing a water well or a sand dam to this community? And how are they creating sustainability for them? Now, we're talking about affecting more than 500 lives at a time. These are moms and dads who have to leave work in order to just get water for their kids. These are kids who have to leave school in order to fetch water for the community. And the generational impact that we can make just by being involved in this, by donating or spreading the word, is amazing. So if you're not in a financial position to help out, my hope is that you just take a little bit of time to meditate or pray and think through, who can I share this initiative with, and tag them. Or talk about it, open a conversation over lunch over this. You never know the ripple effect of the good that could be done simply by opening your mouth. Don't take that for granted. I definitely don't. So without further ado, we're going to bring Andrea on stage. We're going to talk about her vision. And Andrea, thanks so much for joining me on Vision Pros Live.
Thank you again. It is my privilege. I love these conversations.
Oh, it's gonna be fun. Feel free to redirect me at any time, by the way, as we go through this. So I don't think we're gonna have time to get through everything we want to, but we're gonna start with the vision. So there's you're welcome to start with where people are at, but I'm really curious, what is your vision ahead? What does it look like for those people that you're serving?
So the world, I think the reason why I do what I do and the vision that I have is I envision a world with more curious, welcoming, and wise leaders. Leaders who stand by and understand their core values. They recognize their strengths, and then they have a clear set of life principles. Whether they're my intentional optimism tenets or the ones that they've developed on their own after they've started practicing and figuring out how to live those things out. But understanding the difference between those means that we have leaders who can lead with integrity, humility, and authority. That's what I shared a little bit earlier. And to mentor the next generation, right? So to create this cycle of leaders who mentor the next one as they come along. That's my vision.
Mm. I don't normally do this, but I align with the principles that you share. It's very easy to see the tenacity, the passion, and the light, and the love that you use to curate. So you said it really fast. I'm going to slow it back down and say it again. You said leaders who are curious,
Mm-hmm.
leaders who can welcome others, and leaders who are wise.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get centered around these principles?
Well, some of them are my own core values.
I want to see that.
So, yeah. So, knowing what my non negotiables are has informed what my vision is and how I lead other people and how I train other people. And one of my top three core values is belonging. And in order to define a core value, it's an internal principle. It's not something that's external. It's reciprocal. It's something that brings you joy or just really upsets you when it's dishonored. And so for me to be able to say, I am welcoming because I want to foster belonging, not just for me, but also for you, right? I want you to feel like you belong whenever you're in my presence. And therefore, I think as leaders, you talked about having soft leaders or harder leaders. I think we can all be welcoming, whether we're soft or hard by anybody's definition. And as long as we do that, then the conversations about diversity and the curiosity, I call myself, I say I have terminal curiosity. I am one of those people. And whenever I put that out there, like I put that on a social media post, it goes like, because people just think it's hysterical.
It is.
But when we are curious, we are much more welcoming. When, we can say, well, I'm just asking questions and it's clearly there's something behind that. Clearly, there's some kind of agenda. But when we're curious, the agenda is to understand. And so when we do that and we can become more curious about ourselves and about others, we're more likely to cultivate wisdom, right? And so all of those things go hand in hand, and they are kind of a part of just a piece of my core values that I can live out for other people. My top core value is thinking for myself. That's not a vision that I mean, I would love for everybody to be able to do that. And I want people to do that. But my real vision is, how does it get played out in our leadership, in our mentorship, in the way we interact with our communities and our clients?
Wow. There's a lot of depth. One of my favorite books is a book called Feelings Buried Alive Never Die.
I
And
don't know that one.
oh,
I'm writing it down.
there's another great one called The Child Whisperer.
Okay.
And the challenge with those two books is they're just so deep that it takes a long time to, like, you got to really sit with it to really get the whole maximum value. And I'm feeling the same thing with you, Andrea. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many rabbit holes I want to dive down with this. So I want to go back to, I want to tie your concept to one of my own personal challenges. And I think a lot of visionaries, especially the stubborn or the self-assured ones, will benefit a lot from this. So you said we can all be more welcoming. And I too am a big fan of the idea and the sense of belonging. Yet one of the challenges that I face as a leader is, for instance, wouldn't it be nice if everybody came on this stage? Right on Vision Pros Live, that let's welcome everybody onto it. However, the challenge we run into is we end up having leaders. Let's say that I put some guy on stage and he says he has some non-invasive heart surgery that's going to change the world. And it turns out he's an absolute crook and criminal and has no desire to help. But and maybe his intention is to do good, but he's struggling financially. So he's kind of just fudging the numbers and kind of fudging things to move us. Well, we run into that all the time with people who want on our stage to promote their book or to promote something else. And I'm certainly curious until I'm not. Right. Until it's like,
until it's been satisfied.
like this is manipulative. And then the worst, I watched a movie last night, Oppenheimer. And his wife in the movie says something that I was like, ooh, that's a really great line. So I took a picture of the screen of the movie, and she said,
the fastest way to get it.
She said, the truly vindictive are patient as saints. And I was like, that's so true. Why don't people realize that? Right. So
like, oh, that makes me feel itchy.
I have this hard reality of like, I want to be welcoming and I want to let people in, but there's so many people who also take advantage, manipulate, or aren't doing things for the right reasons. Not everybody, but a lot. So how do you balance that?
With wise.
What?
With wisdom.
So, okay.
With wise and discernment. And so another tool that I have discovered that I really like is called Working Genius. And it helps you figure out where you fall on the project line. Like one of that's.
Let me reframe my question.
Okay.
Do you welcome everybody into your circle, or do you have healthy boundaries as well? And,
okay.
And when you come across somebody who is like that, do you burn them at the stake, or do you get them?
I prefer to use the term shields up. Okay. So one of the things that I talk about with core values is that it does help you, and you kind of hinted at this. It helps you define your own space. It helps you define your own boundaries. It's like, this is my house, or my primary core values, and outside my house is my secondary. Nobody walks in my front door without my permission. Unless it's, if they do, that's bad. Right. So it's the same way with and that's how I describe if somebody, like, if my door's open, people are more likely to walk in. And so it's kind of my fault that I left my door open. Like, if somebody steals my car because I left it unlocked, I don't have a lot of recourse there, So being able to define your boundaries, and you talked about with your team, when you all have your own boundaries, you'd think that the boundaries would be something that repels other people. But what's interesting is, when you know where you end and they begin, it is amazing how much closer you can get. Yeah. And so when we talk about being welcoming to everyone, I'm I am very welcoming, and people have called me naive and give people too many chances, but
Mm,
I'll give you a chance or two. But as soon as I see what's really there, right? If you say don't look behind the curtain and then you open the curtain and I see there what's there, I'm like, oh no, no, no. We're done. And it's okay to do that because that's where wisdom and discernment comes in. As a leader, you have to be the one that can make those choices. You have to be the one that says, all right, these are our main principles, but we also have some non-negotiables on how we're going to protect those main principles, right?
yeah.
And so I don't think that's bad at all. I don't burn them at the stake. I might
Right.
let them know that,
Mhm.
yeah, this is not something that we're going to pursue any further.
Yeah.
And I've had to like not air interviews. I've had to
Yeah.
or I've had to chop them down from an hour to 20 minutes because of things that were shared. And I'm like, this is not appropriate to share on a podcast.
Right.
And so those kinds of things that's one of the reasons why I say all of those three together: the curious, the welcoming, and the wise. And if you don't have that discernment yourself, if you've got a team around you, is where I was going with that widget thing. If you
Mhm.
have a team around you that helps you discern, I have a podcast producer who's like, yeah, I don't think so. Because she's
Yeah.
like super like dialed in. And so I think having, again, that good team, even if you're a solopreneur, there's people that you have in your life that are in your
Oh,
orbit that are helping see things.
I'm going to say it right now, Vision Pros, if you're a solopreneur, this is not the show for you. I have never, ever met a solopreneur who's actually winning. They're
Mm,
either stepping on all of the people in their path and not
mm,
giving any credit to anybody, or it's a complete lie. So
mm.
there's probably the unicorn out there who's actually done it, but I have literally never met one. So I'm going to shoot it down. All
Well,
the
and maybe a
entrepreneurs out there.
definition, because I call myself a solopreneur because I don't have paid team members, but I have people that support me
Interesting.
because they believe in my vision that I hope to pay, in the future, but
So
they're
you're not
my
a
team.
solopreneur.
So I'm
You
not,
have
so
a
it
team.
by your definition, I'm not a solopreneur. I have an
Correct.
amazing team. And like for
Right.
Live to Lead, I have a whole volunteer team that is just phenomenal. But
Yeah.
these are people that have proven themselves to me.
Yeah.
These are people
Exactly.
that I know.
Well, I think what we do is we set up a false pretense so for the rest of the world to follow when we speak without that intentionality. It's like, okay, I
Yeah.
get that everybody's drawn to this idea of solopreneurship and it sounds like, oh, cool. I can be an entrepreneur without paying people.
Oh,
True.
no, no. Yeah. You have to pay them
True, but
somehow.
not. And so the words end up when people see that, and the same thing with another entrepreneur, like if you're an entrepreneur and you have a spouse who has their own income, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of boss
Yes.
babes
It's
out there. I'm
me.
gonna call them out.
Mhm.
But I'm specifically talking about the boss babes that hide that reality. You
Oh,
own and you talk about it, but I'm talking about the ones who say
yeah.
they're self-made. They say that, oh, I was able to do this and I was able to do it fast. And what they're not admitting is six-figure hubby salary or
Mm,
six-figure wife's salary is
mm,
actually sustaining all of their mistakes. But
yeah.
meanwhile, they're convincing single moms like mine to think that they have the same chance and the same
Mm.
variables, and that's completely unethical, in my
I
opinion.
agree.
And
Yeah,
that's
that's
something
sad.
that
Mhm.
we have to address as leaders and say, well, wait a second, we're literally leading people off of a cliff due to our privileged statuses, rather than
Mm.
recognizing that we, as a responsibility as leaders, have to be as responsible as a doctor is and saying, before I give you this medicine, what other medicines are you taking? Before I
Right.
give you this medicine, what other conditions do you have?
Mhm.
Too many leaders are able to just fly off the cuff and blab about anything
Mm.
because there is no malpractice for us as leaders.
Right.
There is no checks and balances for the coaches in the world. So
Unless you break the law,
I
right?
gotta step up. Right. Unless what?
Unless you break the law. But I mean,
Yeah.
but
Right.
that's why, Jackson, I talk about the whole point of all of this is to lead with integrity, is to
Yes.
lead with humility, but to still have the authority that you need to do what you need to do. People, Maxwell and other people say people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care,
Okay. One
right?
of my favorite
So
quotes.
that functions in your team, whether it's a paid or unpaid team. That is your clients, that is your audience. Everything that you do, you cannot, I mean, I'm not one of those you have to be a servant leader because I don't think that truly is the perfect picture.
Hmm.
So, because I like to have authority in there, and a servant leader does not feel like they have authority to me. That's like a semantic
Christ
thing.
did. Christ had
Well, that's
absolute
true. No,
authority.
and I'll
And
be the
he,
first to say that, but we're
washed feet. So
but we're not Jesus, and we're human, and we have things that are, but
I just
That's
think it
why I talk.
resonates differently with different people. So I'm with
Right.
you. It's kind of like that word solopreneur. You're welcome to keep your definition on it,
Yeah.
right, and what you do. But I think we're all different in how we see that. So I see servant leadership as the strongest form of leadership
Right.
because that's something that I'm choosing to do, right? It's my own act
Yes.
of giving a service because I chose to do it, not because I'm subservient or forced to.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't use that.
Right.
That to me is a brilliant definition. And if you and there's plenty of places in the world where if you hold up Jesus as the example of the servant leadership, it goes right over people's heads or they shut you down. So, it's like I am looking for ways to describe that without
Yeah.
necessarily,
Right.
not that I would hide from that
I
because
used
that's
to be in that. I used to be in that bucket, and it's an I shouldn't say bucket, right? You got Peter and Paul. They had different missions. They had
yep.
different types of audiences that they needed it, and so I spent a long time where I was leading and knew that I wasn't supposed to mention Christianity at all, and that
Mm.
was my platform, and
Mhm.
how I ran things. And it's funny, a man sent me a voice clip one day, and he said, "Hey Jackson, I got to give you credit. I just got baptized. Thank you for your influence." And I'm thinking, I've never once said the word Jesus, God, Bible, nothing back then. And it's like, this is so neat, and validating. And then as I started work with Carolyn Thompson Twaddle, a great author, by the way, she wrote this book, Living in Sync with Your God-Given Design. It's not because I converted to Carolyn. It's not because of some massive transition that everybody has to go through. For me and myself, I finished a meeting with her. I was showering and I got this voice came that said, "Hey," that said, didn't say, "Hey," it said, "It's time to be unapologetically Christian." And I was like, whoa, that's a huge shift from how I do things. Like, really? It was, yes. That was my new call for this phase of life. But
I love that.
there's a difference for me still. And that this is levels of intentionality, right? And
Yes.
purpose and thinking through. I've always been really, really good at helping atheists and agnostics feel welcome, and feel accepted in my presence and know that I'm not here. I want to learn from you, that curiosity aspect,
Yes.
just as much as if you want to learn something from me, fine. But I'm trying to learn so much. So it's, there's different styles related to it. There's different opportunities. It's helpful to know our audiences, as well. And you and I both do a good job of knowing what the audience looks like. But what you've done for me today in terms of exploring the depths of the well of being welcoming and understanding that the boundaries and how those exist and tying the wisdom to it, there's a couple of key components that I get to play with now. One of them you said was when we are curious, we are more welcoming. And we're constantly going to be refining that process for the people that we're meeting with. So I'm curious, Andrea, you could probably hang it all up and stop tomorrow and go golf or go watch basketball games. But what's your vision for you? What do you see for yourself on the horizon?
You know, this whole idea of it's a daily thing. When we talk about why did you get started doing what you're doing? Well, it's because I have gone through and am going through, right? So my vision for others is very closely tied to my vision for myself. As a coach, as a trainer, as a speaker, as a podcaster, they tell you only have to be like 10 steps ahead. I'm like, well, I want to be at least 10 steps ahead. But sometimes, I learn from, like, I love that you said you learn from me. That's a very high compliment.
Huge.
And to say, like, I learn from every single one of my clients, but my vision for myself is to get to a place where I no longer fear living in my core values and being my own non-negotiable self in order to prove to people I am living proof. I am living proof because I can look confident with the best of them and I can say the best things, but you're not hearing what's going on in my head or when the camera turns off or laying up in the middle of the night thinking about, whatever. And so for me, the vision is to get to that place where I really just no longer worry about it, where I really do trust the process, trust God bringing me through the journey, because our journeys are a little similar. I started with a little, kind of being very Christian and then going through a full almost deconstruction period. And then it was like, no, we don't talk about that at all. And now it's like, it's very clear. It's like coming back in. And
Mhm.
my clients that want to stick around or they keep coming to me are all from church. It's like, okay. And so the vision for myself would be that I would actually be the one that could live out these principles in a way that other people, it was just very clear,
Yeah.
and that they could see that. And if I can
That's what
make
I
a
love
living
about,
doing it,
honestly,
that
that's
would
one
be
of my
great.
favorite things about you as a leader is your focus, as you've talked to us, has been about making sure that we become, right, the person. Your form submission, actually, I'm gonna go back to that because you said some profound things in it that I'd like to make a little space for. If you're willing to, Andrea, I'd love to have you come back on the show to
Okay.
make sure that we talk about the worst leadership experience ever, the best leadership experience ever. I know you've got amazing
I've
depths.
got some worse ones, man.
So exactly. And those are things that we get to learn from. So history doesn't repeat itself for those of us who get to learn from it. So you said in your form, my vision is it's not what you do that makes you an impactful leader, but who you are. And by understanding and respecting your core values, you can move from imitating other people's principles and priorities to defining your own for impactful, sustainable leadership. That process of focusing on who you are is something that was life changing for me. And I to come to first understand. Right, I heard it a couple times, then I understood it, and then when I understood it, I was like, "Oh man, this is like learning about oxygen for the first time."
Yeah.
There's so much more to learn about how this stuff works, and so you've got this depth of wisdom where you've been playing with that concept and implementing. I mentioned the book uh, "Feelings Buried Alive Never Die." It opens your eyes to all these feelings and principles that I maybe took for granted, didn't know
Mm,
how to implement.
mm.
Right, so you have these core values: thinking for myself as one, belonging as another. Belonging being one that hit me. I'm like, that's definitely up there for mine. But I haven't been as intentional about finding the full list of potential principles and values. You seem to have a depth of a list, considering thinking for myself as one. What does that look like? How do you, where's the exercise for this? How did you get to where you've centered yourself so well around principles and what they mean?
Well, this was just one of those pieces when you're a coach and you get coach training. One of the things they talk about is like helping people figure out their core values. And there's people who do this, like Brene Brown is really good at it. But when I
Yeah.
started looking at how I was supposed to walk other people through this, I thought, oh, I need to do this for myself. And so I just really dove in. And if you scroll all the way back up to the top, there's a couple of buttons on my website there. And one of them is that Get Connected will do
My
it. But there's,
scroller speaks Spanish, so
oh,
they might make it.
I've forgotten my Spanish. I'm actually in Duolingo studying Korean right now, and so it's like "Ape so kachiga." Um, but if you all the way to the top, there's a button, and it says "Free Core Values Exercise." It's a downloadable
There you go.
PDF that will kind of walk you through the steps. And for some people, that's enough. For somebody like you, that might be enough. If for some reason that's not enough, there is a core values exercise, a core values digital course, and that's under tools. You're looking at different tools that are coming across the website here, and I also have, and it's not out on my website yet, but you can contact me. I'm in beta testing of core values coaching. So you go through the course and you meet with me for 6 different sessions to actually push back and walk through and help you figure them all out. Some people, it just depends on how you're wired, how you need
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So,
Well, I love it, and I'm excited about. I'm excited from where you came from that because I think all of us have come across certain assessments with that, right? And as it's kind of like having different math teachers, right? If
oh,
you could
sure.
see every math teacher and you were like obsessed with math, right? And then you look at the formulas that they're all drawing in the chalkboards, you could learn from all of them different techniques and different realities. So, um, I'm glad to know that I'm going to be diving into the resource. I'm going to take that assessment myself, to take a look and see what I learned from it. Just like positive intelligence, Barbara Ann
Mm.
Garden Mills is a real big fan and advocate, ambassador for that program. And I love Strengths Finder 2.0.
Oh, yes.
Another fantastic tool
Yeah, yeah.
for it. You got the DISC, you got the Myers Briggs.
Yep.
I designed
Enneagram.
passionpro.org. So
I do it all.
passionpro.org is one that most people aren't aware of. And then the one I would say I started with was actually part of a book called Preach My Gospel. And that was our missionary training guide in
Mm.
the Church of Jesus Christ. And in it, there's a chapter dedicated to Christ-like attributes. And in the Christ-like attributes, there's an assessment at the end for attributes that, how are you doing with your patience, your kindness, your
Yeah.
love, your charity, your service, and beyond. And the more we dig in and realize that there's opportunities to develop. There's actually opportunities to cultivate this in our life. For me, the better life becomes. So I'm really excited to take the assessment, see where that takes me on the journey. And those of you who want to get connected with Andrea Johnson, we're going to have the action steps below this episode too. So you can dive in and follow her on all the different social platforms. And we'll have the assessment on there too, so you can take it. And then down below that, we'll have all of the resources. Lastly, on that page, we'll have a button in the top right corner. And that button says, be our guest. If you also want to come share your vision of how you're helping the world and how you're bringing light to others, and come and share. You can be, the people we talked about, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, come and join us. We'd love to have you on the show if you'd love to be here. And you might be I'm looking forward to the day that a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad decides to come and want to share their vision on this platform. It's not about the wealth and the money. It's not about the politics. It's not about being the most known person. It's about being dedicated to principles and visions that are holistic and help the rest of us level up in all that we're doing. So as we close today, Andrea, we got a couple minutes left. I don't want to go over on your time, but I'm going to give the mic to you. Feel free to close us out today.
If there's one thing that I could leave every single person listening with, it would be this. Think for yourself. You have the ability, you have the authority. Get curious about why you think certain things. Get curious about what I call your ABCs, your assumptions, your beliefs, and conditioning. Why are those there? Where did they come from? When you're willing to think for yourself, it is amazing what will open up for you. You have a vision. Even if, like Jackson said, you're a stay-at-home parent, you might even think you don't have a vision, but you do. And just like you have core values that you may not recognize. So be willing to think for yourself. You can do this. And we need to hear what you can bring to the table. Because if you're at a good holiday meal and somebody forgets the main course, or somebody forgets that one side that everybody loves, we miss out. So when you don't show up as you at the table, we all miss out. And we look forward to hearing exactly what you are.
I love that. You heard it from Andrea Johnson. Think for yourself. You're all visionaries, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent